folks that I think like me. I also, first of all, I want to introduce my wife, Lou, who came along with me.
Yeah.
This woman's a trooper. 8 corporate moves in 35 years. She's bought 9 houses. We retire. We moved to Greenwood. And one night I wake up and say, I want to run for Congress. She says, this may be the straw that broke the camel's back. Tell you a little bit about myself. Again, I talked about 35 years in the corporate world. I worked for Kimberly-Clark Corporation. If you don't know who they are, some of you people make Kleenex, Japan, Kotex, and so on. I was a sales manager, a marketing director, a sales director. When I got 62, living in Chicago at the time, Kimberly-Clark did what a lot of corporations do with people my age. We had a long conversation. We decided it would be pretty nice if I started my retirement. So I come home and I say, well, what are we going to do now? And she said, well, what do you think we ought to do? And I said, well, I don't want to stay here in Illinois. We're paying 4.3% real estate tax. We're paying 5% state income tax. For every 10 miles, you stop down the road and you throw $1.20 out the window to pay the tolls. And the state's $20 billion in debt. I've seen what big government, liberal government does to you. I said, what are we going to do? Well, let's go to Florida. That's what people do. We're not ready to go to Florida yet. Let's go back home. Grew up on the south side of Indianapolis. We go up and we find a home in Greenwood. Now, I know there's someone from Lafayette here. A couple Purdue people, but I can accept that. So I do want to let you know I'm an IU guy, graduated from IU, so we go back to Greenwood. Well, what am I going to do now that I'm retired? I'm 62. I still feel like I've got a lot of energy. So I start playing golf. Okay. After a couple summers of golf, I reached the conclusion that I look in the paper every day and there's not a whole lot of demand for guys that shoot 92 in the PGA Tour, so that kind of is out the window. So I reached a conclusion, I start reading again. And one of the books I picked up was a book called The Conscience of a Conservative, written by a man named Barry Goldwater. Now, I heard Barry speak in 1964 during his presidential campaign at Southport High School, where I graduated. And as I read the book, I got further and further into it, and I said, you know something? A lot of the stuff that Barry warned could happen with the size of this government has indeed happened. And that we're in deep, deep trouble. I said, well, that's okay, because it's all the Democrats' fault. It really is. Those lousy liberals, they run it. They gave us Social Security, which a lot of us need. I understand that. When you look at it, it's really not a great system because it only pays 2% of return on your money. It also takes 14% of you when you add what you pay and what your company pays. But I understand we got to have that. Well, they also gave us the Department of Education as a cabinet position, $115 million on our test scores go down every year. They gave us the welfare state. They gave us the war on poverty that 40 years later still hasn't been won. It's probably been lost and we've spent trillions. So it's got to be the Democrats' fault. So then I started looking, okay, well, I've been voting the right way because I never paid attention to elections, but every 2 years I'd go in and a week before the election I'd watch TV and I'd listen to the Republican candidate tell me what I wanted to hear, and I'd go in and I'd push that button, and if he won, great, things are going to be better. If he lost, rotten Democrat. Then I started looking at my own congressman. And there's a couple, there's a Heritage Foundation and the Freedom Works that measures how conservative congressmen are. Okay? My congressman scores in the mid-50s on the Heritage Foundation. A guy like Craig Gowdy, who I admire, scores in the 90s. Freedom Works, my congressman scores in the low 60s. Indiana has 7 Republican congressmen. My congressman is the second most liberal Republican in the House of Representatives. Heritage Classic also does a neat thing where they measure the values of the district. I live in the most conservative district in the state of Indiana, and I have the second most liberal Republican member in the House of Representatives. And yet, I went back and reviewed how this gentleman runs, and he runs as a conservative. I really do believe he talks like Barry Goldwater, for those of you who remember that, and he votes like Lyndon Johnson. And you're going to watch his ads, and he's going to run on all the right stuff. You know, he's going to talk about tax reform. The man's been there for 5 years. What has happened in those 5 years to our tax system? We've added 9,000 more pages. There's now 74,000 pages to the tax reform. But he's going to talk about tax reform. My question is, tax reform, why does it never get done? It just never gets done. One other thing that really disturbed me about it, there's a group of Republican congressmen, and the Republicans are more conservative, have a lot, in my opinion, better congressmen than the Democrats. But there's a group called the Main Street Republicans. There's 50 of them in the House of Congress. 2 of them are in the state of Indiana, 2 Republicans. Again, it's a Republican organization. Susan Brooks, who is the most liberal of Indiana's 7 Republican congressmen, and Todd Young. Go out and check the Main Street Republicans and read about what their goal is. And one of their fundamental goals is to make sure the country doesn't go too far right. One of the major contributors to the Main Street Republicans is George Soros. In case that name didn't ring a bell to you, George Soros was a major contributor to the Obama campaign. His goal is to make sure we don't shift too far right. And all I'm saying is this district deserves a conservative congressman. So I said, you know what? I'm going to run. I have a good friend here named Larry Walker who introduced me to a gentleman from the Libertarian Party, and during lunch we're talking about my political positions. This gentleman looks at me and says, "You're not a Republican, you're a Libertarian." And I came home and I told my wife, "I don't think I can eat meat." But then I found out that really is what a libertarian is. And I don't fundamentally agree with the libertarians on everything, probably about 85 or 90% of it. The big thing is they do believe in limited government. And I really think that's what the folks in this room and the folks in this district. Again, you're going to see a guy that's got two. If you don't think elections are bought, I'm learning a lot. I'm a novice. There's a couple exceptions to me and my opponents. First of all, I'm not a professional at this. Bill Bailey, the Democrat nominee, former mayor, served in the House, the state legislature, and so on. President of a Chamber of Commerce. He's been running for some type of office probably the last 20, 25 years with the exception of a sabbatical he took between his last run. And if there's a definition of professional, it's Todd Young. The man was elected to Congress at 34. He's running for his 3rd term here at 40 years old. Rumor has it, and I'd be willing to almost place a bet on it, if he wins this election and Dan Coates retires, and that's a rumor, Todd Young runs for the United States Senate. And I have a feeling if he keeps winning elections, we'll be voting for Todd Young 35 years from now. This man is a professional politician. That's a career he's picked out. I don't think the Founding Fathers meant for politics to be a career. I'm also not an attorney. That's a black eye. I think it's 75% of the folks in the House of Representatives are attorneys. That's why bills are 1,500 pages long. That's why the tax code's 74,000 pages long. What would be wrong to have someone that's got a business background, that's got a corporate background? Corporations are not necessarily an evil thing. Imagine that I actually worked for a company that made money, that didn't print $20 trillion or put us $20 trillion net. I worked for a company that I got a budget every year that I had to operate. I couldn't vote for a $45 billion extension like Todd Young voted for this year that President Obama wanted. There was a group of Republicans that wanted to take some of the federal agencies and reduced it to the funding they had in 2008. 135 Republicans voted along with that. Todd Young was one of them that didn't. All I'm saying is the folks in this room deserve a true conservative, deserve a true small government guy. Now, what are the key issues I want to run on? First thing, limit the size of federal government. It's got way too big. We're $18, $20 trillion in debt. Do you see a plan to ever get it reduced? I don't think they have to. That's my number one priority. We've got to slow the growth of this government down, or it's not going to bury me. By the time we go bankrupt, I probably won't be here. If you got kids and you got grandkids, particularly your grandkids, how are they going to pay for that? And it's not because you don't pay enough in taxes. When you get home sometime, I want you to sit down and start writing down all the taxes you pay, because I did this, I was kind of shocked. You pay federal income tax, let's say 15%. Some of you probably pay more, some of you probably pay less, 15%. You pay a state income tax, it's 4.2%. You pay real estate taxes. Every time you put gas in the car, You pay gas tax. Every time you buy something at the store, you pay a sales tax. Every time you get a cable bill, there's 3 or 4 taxes onto that. I added it up one year, and now granted I had a good year income line, but I added up and I paid 62% of my incomes to some type of tax. And yet in government's eyes, big government eyes, not all representatives, but in big government's eyes, it's never enough. The issue is we never have enough money. Spending is the problem. You think I'm crazy when I say that, and some of you do probably, but believe me, it's not the case. Government, we spend $115 billion on the Department of Education, which was established as a separate cabinet position in 1980 by Jimmy Carter. $115 billion for the federal government to tell us how to run our schools in Martinsville, or to tell you how to run your schools in Mooresville. We started at 1980. What's happened to the test scores of American schools since that started? They flatlined or actually gone down, and our rating in the world has gone down. So what does that $115 billion a year give us? Believe me, government does not always spend money efficiently. Another thing I want to run on is what I call fair and equal. I find it pretty amusing in Washington, D.C. They pass legislature, like Social Security. A lot of people, that's really their pension plan, Social Security. How's come Congress isn't on Social Security? How's come federal workers aren't on Social Security? Why do they have their own program? Obamacare was recently passed by the liberal Democrats. That's going to have to be the program a lot of you are on, Obamacare, Medicare. How's come Congress isn't on? How's come they have their own program? Are they special? I always get this mixed up. I always say Animal House because that was one of my favorite movies by Peter Paul. There's a book called Animal Farm. I assume most of you had to read it in junior high or something. There's a line in there that I think about it and I said, really, it's the state we're in right now. All animals are created equal, but some animals are created more equal than others. And that's what our federal government has done. 3 of the 4 richest counties in the country, in this entire country, you would guess maybe California, maybe New York, Washington, D.C. Why do these guys, when they get elected to office, their net worth doubles and triples? It just amazes me. They have set up a system, and they've set it up so they can't lose elections because they gerrymandered. The incumbent's going to spend $2 million to get himself reelected. He spent $600,000 in the primary. I calculated it to be $30 a vote. Now, you don't think the system is set up for these guys? They've set the system, and yet we keep re-electing the same people. Why? So that's one of my big issues. I also want to touch on fair and equal. One of the things I think we can do is I believe in term limits. I don't believe the Founding Fathers meant for people to be professional politicians. And if you don't think it's a good gig, I worked for a company, and my wife, it was a wonderful company. Kimberly Clark was wonderful. They treated us wonderful. But I can tell you at 62, I was burned out. I was ready to retire. I mean, man, the 50-hour weeks, the airplanes and so on, I was ready to retire. These guys run for re-election when they're 76, 80 years old. Now, why is that? Because they set the system up that, first of all, I think the job must be pretty easy because I guarantee you, I couldn't do the job I did when I'm 80 years old. There's no way. They have set up a system that's good for them, and it's pretty good job security. Because 95% of them or 90% of them get re-elected. So the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to really, really think about this because 3 outcomes are going to happen here. Number one, you guys and folks that think, and I've traveled around this district and you can't believe how many people say, we agree with you, we agree with you. I said, just go in there and push a different button for once in your life. Actually give someone who's not a professional a chance. Ronald Reagan had a hard time the very first time he voted Republican. You read about it in his books. He said he went in there and he closed that curtain and He was worried that, he's going to go push that button, his hands shook and he sweated and everything, and he pushed that Republican button. He expected to open the curtain and it'd be raining and storming, a snow in California. He walked out, the sun was shining, the skies were clear. You guys vote for me, that's the way you're going to feel, because you've done the right thing. But again, 3 outcomes. Are you going to leave here and say, you know what, that guy is a quack, he ought to go back selling Kleenex. He probably wears the pen. I mean, those are the options you have. And then you know what's going to end up happening? Todd Young's going to get reelected, and 2 years from now, you folks will be meeting and going, man, who are we going to support for Senate? We're going to send Todd up to the senator, get him on his career to whatever it's going to be, where he's going to be a 5-term senator, or maybe a vice president, and maybe he can stay with the mainstream Republicans and they push the Republican Party a little further left. And you're going, my God, can you believe they nominated Jeb Bush from Mitt Romney again? Because I think that's what very well could happen if you don't vote conservative. Or, I convince enough of you, but not enough of you to elect me. And I convince enough of you, and Bill Bailey, the former mayor and the former representative in the state assembly, goes to Washington. And you know what, if he gets elected, and Todd Young gets elected, I don't see a whole lot of difference. The only thing that would happen, I really think would happen, is you'll send a message to the Republican Party that the folks in the 9th District of Indiana don't want a middle-of-the-roader or someone that leans a little left in the Republican Party as their representative. Or the third thing could happen. The third thing could happen. Folks and folks that think like you and me, you go out and you share what you heard tonight with me, and I reach enough people, because I'm absolutely convinced it's about reaching people, because I've worked these county fairs. I had people in Brown County running it up to me saying, how can we help, how can we help? Problem is, I don't have $2 million. I don't have anywhere close to that. You don't think Todd Young's going to buy this thing? That's what he's got. In fact, I truthfully can say he's beginning to spend it already. Because my first name is, I'm known as Ralph Michael Fry, okay? I go by Mike. We got a phone call today at home at 4:15. And, hello, Clarksville, Indiana calling. First of all, I know that's a fib. Clark County, I thought that was a fib because I know how this thing works. And basically, they were probably calling from St. Louis, but they got a Clark County interchange. Because you can do that, you can set up a cell phone and get an interchange, but they want to make sure they sound like they're from Indiana. She's not calling Indiana, it's an election call. She goes, can we count on your support to support Congressman Todd Young? And I said, young lady, I said, you have about 20 minutes? She said, no, what does that mean? I said, believe me, I'm not voting for Todd Young. She goes, okay, thank you, so I'm sure I'm off of this, so I won't get another call and ask me if I vote. And maybe I'll get a couple. But the third thing is what could happen. If I can reach enough people, if you guys can get out and help me, I've got brochures, if you guys can get out there and talk to people, an actual conservative, an actual limited government guy wins the 9th District race in Indiana. Now you're going to say, one libertarian, what the heck can you do? Do you know what would happen if I won this thing? Do you imagine what the nightly election news would be about in the state of Indiana? Do you know what the national news would be? An independent, libertarian candidate for the United States Congress beat a 2-term Republican liberal protege in the state of Indiana. I guarantee it would. It would be the biggest news, one of the biggest stories in the national election. And not only that, it would actually give the folks in the 9th District a much bigger voice than it would if you elect a Republican that'll be 1 or 200 or whatever it is on election night that they'll end up with. It'll be the biggest news in this state. And I'll be able, with your help, to get on TV, and I'll be able to say the folks in the 9th District want this $18 trillion deficit to stop. They don't want the government spying on them. How about, instead of spying on us, you guys finally do something about the border that Brett talked about? Those are the things that we can address, but I need your help. More than anything else, when you go close that curtain, do what Ronald Reagan did. Push a different button. Believe me. If any of this, I shouldn't say this because I my wife, we don't have that kind of money. I was going to say, if anyone suffers some traumatic illness because they voted for me, I was going to say, I'd give you $500,000. I can't. I promise you, you'll probably feel better because you're doing the right thing and you're voting for the right reason. That's all I'm asking. I'm asking for your vote. Now you can check my webpage. I gave you all the sheet, but if you don't have it, it's www.brideforcongress. Read my positions. If I make sense, vote for me, please. If I don't, vote for whoever you've been voting for. The only thing I ask is, once you do that, don't be bitching 2 years from now when nothing has really changed. When things are still the same. When the government, the deficits are approaching $20 trillion. The tax code is probably up to $80,000 a year. But they'll be coming back saying, we're going to change that tax code. We promise you. That's it. That's all I have. Do we have time for questions? Anyone's got any questions and answers? Yes, sir.
One of the things that I just got on my full Social Security this year, well, it really happened last year, and one of the things I got hit with made me very unhappy. Back under Ronald Reagan's terms, there was a bill passed that said that they could start taxing up to 50% of my Social Security income, okay? I got hit with 65%, and I don't have any other income except for what my wife makes. And I asked my tax consultant, and she says, I said, is there anything to do? Can I just let her go do her thing and me stay separate? She says, no, if you stay separate, because you're not at poverty level, you'll pay almost 100% on your Social Security. I want that repealed. I can understand us paying the half that the employer put in for us. I can understand us having to maybe pay something on it, but not 65% of what I'm getting on my Social Security check. I'm taxed on that amount.
Donna, that kind of surprised me because I pay taxes on mine too because I have some investment income that counts as income. So I pay it. But that does surprise me. I would look at. I really would contact because that seems a little.
Well, I've asked about it, and you know I don't get any.
Do you mind if I check on it though? Because
sure.
I have a good friend who's pretty good in that.
I'd like to find out because obviously I don't want to pay that much on my Social Security.
Well, we're talking about taxes, the complexity. I got one story I want to tell you why. And first of all, I didn't really get into it because I believe in either flat or flat tax. You do it on one page, you eliminate the $11 or $12 million and you pay the IRS. It's a one-page tax form. It's on my webpage. I ask you to look at it. But story about taxes. I do my own taxes. I was up at our corporate headquarters in Neenah, Wisconsin. And one year I thought it would be kind of fun. So I did my taxes the way I normally do. And I also had a friend that was an accountant up there, a private accountant. And I took my taxes to him. And I said, Bill, do me a favor. Do my income taxes. Then I took my taxes to a corporate attorney that we had at Kimberly Clark. And this is a corporate tax guy. I said, do my individual taxes for me. I said, I'll pay you. He did it for free. I don't think I wrote it off, but anyway, he, and you know what? We came up with 3 different answers on what my taxes were.
Really? Yeah.
Now, we were close. We were within $120 of each other. But to think about it, this thing is so complex that you've got 2 experts and a guy that actually, I'm pretty good with math. And we couldn't even come up with the same answer. I guarantee you. Have you ever tried to call the IRS and ask for advice? Believe me, they don't know what's going on. And I shouldn't bring this up because it's kind of a personal thing, but I think it's reality. Your current congressman, that was a state tax problem. It wasn't a federal tax problem. It's still part of the tax system. Your incumbent congressman 2 years ago filed wrong tax returns and owed the state of Indiana $5,000. And I'm not going to add that his first check bounced, but his second check did clear. But it did cost Monroe County a little bit of money in the state to process the check. But my only question is, if you're an existing congressman and you can't get your taxes right, how can MikeFrey get his right? How can Larry Walker, Steve Pamela, how can anyone here get their taxes right? It's time to simplify the process. On 75% of the lawyers, why are bills 15? But anyway, I digress. I'm sorry.
Michael, I have a question. A lot of times I like a lot of the views that libertarian candidates have, except when it comes to, it seems like the military, I don't feel like they want a strong enough military. How do you feel about that? I mean, I see you mention a couple of things here about the military.
Well, here's how I feel about the military. And I'm a little different than my party. Not completely, because I think the United States, since I've got out of college, has fought some very ill-advised wars and spent a lot of money and a lot of manpower. I think Iraq is pretty well in question. I mean, I don't think that was a good thing for us to do. I really don't know. That was supposed to be a response to 9/11, but I'm not so sure whether that worked. Vietnam, obviously, even though we had a lot of, and I had some friends go over there, a lot of brave soldiers went over there and everything. Vietnam certainly wasn't a good experience for us. We obviously, I think the government's #1 role is defense of the country. There's no doubt about that. You've got to protect it. But like all parts of government, I gotta believe there's waste there. One of the things, 50,000 troops in Japan. Do we really need 50,000 soldiers in Japan anymore? Japan's a vibrant economy. It's a strong nation. I think they could probably defend themselves. I've actually got one of my ideas. You're crazy. Is why don't we keep 20,000 troops in Japan, bring 30,000 of them home, maybe put 15,000 on the border and seal the border, protect it first. We're worried about protecting Japan. We can't even protect. People talk about this terrorist and spying on American citizens and so on. If I'm a terrorist, you know where I'd go? Central America. I mean, come on. Let's put some. We got 25,000 troops in South Korea. Why do we need that? And I had a good friend that worked out at Fort Benjamin Harrison, and he told me that there is waste in the military. We spend a lot of money on weapon systems, some we never even use. All I'm saying is start treating these guys like I got treated as a corporation. I got a phone call one time, my business was sliding and everything else. My boss calls up and says, hey, we just got next year's budget. You got to spend 50% less and deliver the same business you did this year. I said, how am I going to do that? He said, it's your job. Yeah. These guys have a job. I would have loved to say, you know what, Rich? I'll just go down to the mailroom and we'll print a couple more $1 million and I'll deliver the volume you're asking me to deliver, which is what these guys in Washington, D.C. do. They print money. I guarantee you. First of all, freeze government salaries. That would help military, that would help all everybody. Take away government pensions and put them on the same program that they're asking us to put them. Same thing for military. But I do believe you got to spend money, and it's got to be our #1 expenditure. But I'm just saying we got to spend it wisely. We got to look at it. Let's analyze it base by base, weapon system by weapon system, and see really where we can save money. I think it's a fallacy to budget that big to say we can't save money. I mean, that's just crazy. Yes, sir.
I got two things. One thing I heard today that Nancy Pelosi will receive $800,000 a year when she retires.
Pretty nice pension.
The second, I'd like to know what you think term limits should be for the House and the Senate.
And I've gone back and forth on this. I'm thinking 12 years, 2 terms for the Senate, 12 for the Congress, 6 terms for the Congress. And that's long enough. Career politicians. And you don't think the Republican Party, a certain element of the Republican Party, because I know most people are Republicans, I was a Republican until a year and a half ago. Look what they did in Mississippi. You had a small government Tea Party guy win the Mississippi primary. And the mainstream Republican Party, which Todd Young's a part of, said, no, we can't have that. We've got Thad Cochran, 76 years old, and nothing against someone 76, but please don't take this wrong. My grandfather, when he was 78 years old, we wouldn't let him back the car out of the driveway. And I don't mean that mean, but it's true. He's 76 years old. He's 70. All I'm saying is, there comes a time. And yet, you know what the Republican Party did? They went and encouraged Democrats to cross over and vote the Republican primary to re-elect Thad Cochran, and they stole that election from the Tea Party and the conservative candidate. And that bothers the hell out of me. And it should bother you too.
I just got to speak up on that because I'm from Mississippi and I have followed this very closely. I've been rabid about it actually. It wasn't that they reached out to the Democrats. That was done in our state. That happens. They didn't reach out. They used them because they used racism against the opponent and the conservatives who supported him, which is a far bigger crime than just didn't get Democrats to vote. It takes it to a whole new level.
But they stole the election from him.
But I do have a question for you though, because I have no doubt that you're very sincere in what you want to do, and I think that you would, try to do everything you're saying you do. But because we are in this two-party system that has been designed to keep it that way, and Congress gets to make their own rules. That's constitutional. They get to make rules. They determine who the chairs are. You would have to caucus with one group or the other. You're not going to be this one person that gets a microphone. Congress doesn't really get microphones, period. The Senate does too. So what committees do you foresee doing, and how are you going to be able to whittle in, especially when when it's typically the Libertarian Party gripes against both parties, and I'm not saying that they don't deserve it, but I mean, you've got to fit in them when you get there. You don't already have the whole thing waiting for you, so how do you fit in? What committees would you like to be on?
I obviously would like to be on the finance committee because I think that's our biggest problem, and that really is my biggest concern. Now, I understand your question, but I'm just saying, who is going to have, and again, we talk about this, because I think a lot of this is grassroots, and you're right. We are in a two-party system, but what's the number one concern? Not all of them, but those career politicians, what's their number one concern? Getting re-election. Who's going to have a bigger voice?
I'm not saying you would have a voice.
Okay, so I'm
just
saying I will have a voice though, and unfortunately, my wife can testify. My friends can testify. I'm not shy. I'll say what I.
You're not shy.
I'll say what I think, and believe me, I'll be out there and I'll be loud and I'll be vocal. Yeah, I don't know, but you can't start things from the grassroots. The Tea Party starts from the grassroots. And all I'm saying is, if we don't do something, if we keep doing the same things we've been doing, guys, it's never going to change. I'm absolutely convinced. Todd Young gets reelected, nothing's going to be any different. I'm not guaranteeing you that something will be different, the tax will be different, but I guarantee you I'll be up there and I'll be complaining, I'll be bitching, and I'll probably be on TV. I might even get on Fox News. I'll be on the local channels, and I'll be loud and vocal. I'll tell you what bothers me. You've got an incumbent congressman that held 3 town hall meetings. He had one here in Martinsville, one in New Albany, and one in Bedford. The one in Bedford was attended by 9 people. The one in New Albany was attended by 25 people. And the one in Martinsville was attended by 35 people. 9 of them, which I called. I called the newspaper up here. I don't know where they printed it. I called the Franklin paper and said, Todd Young's having a town hall meeting. He didn't publicize it. He didn't want people coming. He didn't publicize it to Bedford. 9 people. He had 10 staff members in Bedford. He had 9 people show up. He doesn't want to do anything. I have called his office 4 times. Now, he's an experienced politician. He's a lawyer. He's probably a hell of a lot better than this. I spent my whole life talking about Kleenex and marketing programs. Come on. This guy's been in Congress for 5 years. He's run for office for the 3rd time. He's a professional. He ought to do real well in a debate. 4 phone calls, none returned. 2 emails, none answered. A letter directly to him, none answered. All I'm saying is, these guys are just interested, a lot of them, not all of them, I understand it. But this guy, I really believe, is just interested in having a career. He was a former page for Dick Lugar, and Dick Lugar was a wonderful senator for a lot of years till at the end. But the fact of the numbers, I think this guy had it figured out. I'm going to be a professional politician from the time he was probably 18 or 19. And he'll be one until he's 80. Unless we start sending a message. Unless we all. Barry Goldwater had it, and it just dawned on me. It was my favorite line in that campaign in '64. And because Barry, I'm sorry, because Barry got defeated, and he was the first conservative candidate. But Barry's one line, and this is really what I feel I am. Because I think the 2 major parties like this, or at least at the national level, a choice, not an echo. Bill Bailey's done, or Todd Young does a member of Bill Bailey's vice versa. I'm a choice. A limited government choice. You can vote for me if you want. If you don't, you can vote for me. That's all. I'm just asking for your chance, and I'm probably taking so much time. People are getting tired and want to go home and they're sick of listening.
Thank you, Mike.